Hello, savvy listeners. I am excited you are taking the time to invest in yourself today. Savvy, the business podcast, will show you how your daily habits can create your own platform. Experts will share solutions and efficient tips to create a roadmap just for you. One thing that can make this happen: change your habits, change your success. Welcome to Savvy, the business podcast. Hello, everyone. Thank you again for joining me on Savvy, the business podcast. We have our guest today is Natalie Sistan. And, I reach out, I'm always looking for experts so I can bring you different people, a different vibe, different feel for our experts. So you can, start seeing the variety of things that's out there. And this could be someone that you've been looking for. You never know. So I'm going to give you a little bit of her bio, but we're going to have a great conversation so you can really get to know Natalie and what she's doing. Natalie is a founder, speaker, writer, and coach, small town leadership. Her career has taken her from Silicon Valley to the Fortune 100 and into entrepreneurship. But being raised in Republic, Ohio, a population of 600, is where she learned her greatest leadership lessons. In a small town, each person's work matters. Everyone feels cared for, and collaboration is necessary to survive and thrive. Yes. You are seeking a fresh way to look at your company and leadership style. Think of it small town style. It's where everyone plays an important role. Working with what you have is the norm, and a culture of caring is expected. I like the way you worded that.
Thank you very, very much. I worked very hard because I love words. So I like having someone else read it. I'm like, okay, yeah, that worked. That worked.
I like the way you worded that. And the reason I say this is because you took the analogy of your small town and, put a little twist on it. So tell us a little bit about, with the small town and some of the things you're doing, just tell us a little bit about you and how you got to where you are right now.
Yeah, absolutely. So coming from Republic, Ohio, I went from town of 600 people to the largest university in the country. I'm a two-time graduate of the Ohio State University. And going from the very, very small town to a big campus, and then I moved across the country after I graduated from college. One thing I kept noticing about myself is that I had a proclivity to want to make every place I went feel like Republic, Ohio. I really wanted to get to know people. I wanted to get involved. I wanted to volunteer. I was just that kind of person. And so as I got further and further into my career, which then took me into leadership in the Fortune 100, I always knew there was something different about how I thought about business. And it wasn't that I was any smarter than anybody. It wasn't that I had a different pedigree or degrees, but it truly was this idea of being raised in a place where all those things you said in the intro are true. Everyone's work needs to matter. Everyone needs to know that when it's their time to be called on to help, you're expecting them to roll up their sleeves. People care about you and they want the best. And I think the more I, stood in the Fortune 100 world, it struck me that not a lot of people thought that way. And I thought, well, how cool would it be if companies, leaders had the tools, had the stories, had the metaphors to help them make their company feel more like that small town. And that's where small town leadership was born.
Wow. So the word work matters. It's almost simple, but at the same time, it's so big. So can you talk a little bit about, more about work matter and more so the depth of it? Because we'll be like, okay, yeah, work matters. Yeah, we're here to work because of whatever. So can you, really hone in on that a little bit more?
I sure can. I feel like I'm back in my coaching sessions because last year I worked with a wonderful coach named Jeffrey Shaw, and he helped me refine all of the things we're talking about right now. But we spent probably 2 solid hours on the word matter.
Mm.
And so I just love that you caught on to that, because it's so true. I think when you're in a small town, whatever you do, people see that. And it matters whether you did it amazingly or not so amazingly. It matters. From, if we're going to survive and thrive, like you said in that introduction, then I need to make sure that the work product I'm putting out, the thing I'm doing day in, day out, is helping us take steps forward, not backward. And as I was thinking about employee engagement and who effective leaders were, I really was able to see that when I've thrived and when the people around me have been thriving, and when I'm not showing up at dinner parties and everybody's complaining about their bosses, it's usually when they are in lockstep with their organization and they know that day in, day out, their work matters. Because we're all given the same amount of time in a week. We all have 168 hours a week. And if we're spending our 40 pushing one piece of paper from one side of the desk to the other, not sure what that's doing at the end of the day, then it's kind of a why bother moment. But on the flip side, when you can make sure that you know how that paper sliding back and forth across the desk connects to a bigger mission, then all of a sudden you shine and you want to do better for that organization. And it's like all this stuff that's super, super simple that we take for granted so much. And I think that's, for a long time, I thought, oh, this small town thing is what holds me back. But honestly, it's what's propelled me forward, because I'm always going back to basics, always, always. And work matters. And even the work ethic that comes along with that has been hands down rule number one for small town leadership.
Wow, I love that. And the other reason I kind of honed in on that is because with our new normal, with COVID, I mean, I use the word a lot, and there's a lot. Oh, I wish you stopped saying that. We don't have a new normal. The reality is, we do have a new normal. We're not going to go back to the way that we've operated before, because in a very, very short period of time, we all globally had to learn how to work differently. We've had to pivot in various ways to say, okay, I need to figure out how to make this work. Or, we're about to shut down. What can I do? What can I add on? There's a lot. I mean, everybody's in that different lane trying to figure those things out. And that matter part is, what can I do? What is your shift? What is your new normal? Because you have to make those adjustments.
Not only do you have to make those adjustments, and I love that you use the word pivot, because I think that pivoting is something that I grew up learning how to do very, very easily, because you worked with what you had. Like, if you didn't have the supplies or things you needed, there wasn't a store 2 minutes away. It was figure it out, go in the basement, rummage around, get the things you need, call a friend, do whatever you need to do. And I think we've all experienced now 8 months of a real strong pivot. And every time we try to pivot back to what we wish it was, we're finding ourselves pivoting even further. And it's different because our lives and works are intertwining now in ways that they have never before. I mean, my children, who are 8 and 11, are home with my husband and I now half a day every day. Thankfully, they get to go to school half a day. So they're out of our house for 3 hours. So out of a 24-hour period, we are all together for 21 of those hours. And that starts to make anybody question if what they're doing matters. There have probably been more days in the pandemic when I'm like, is my parenting working? Because I have been so connected to my work. And I think for a lot of people, they step into their work, it feels easier, but they step away from their loved ones and family. So I think we have this really neat opportunity, because this isn't going away anytime soon, for us to really take stock of what is mattering right now. And are you okay with that? And if not, then, to use your word again, pivot to where you want it to be.
Right. And if you don't mind, hitting back, like you say, you question your parenting skills. And it's not that you've never before said, whether you're a good mom or a good dad or anything. It's just now you have all of this in your face of, before it was get up, get dressed, get on the school bus, or I'm dropping you off, and they're gone for 6 to 8 hours. And if they're in any sports or anything, then okay, they're gone for an additional, 4 to 5 hours. but now it was no preparation, it was no warning, it was no parent teacher conference, it was none of that. It was like, here. So with what can you share to other parents, and not only just working out of your home, but you are an entrepreneur, and now is kids, entrepreneurship, husband, family, I mean, all of those pieces that you got to work out. So can you share a little bit about that, and maybe even some balancing tips?
Yeah, I think what's been most interesting for me, so I actually quit my corporate job mid-pandemic. I left a very stable job in the Fortune 100 in July because I was ready to take the leap. And I figured if I can do it now, I can do anything.
Yeah.
But what that's done, and to connect it to your question, is prior to taking that step, I'm not saying leap because it was several steps to get there, but I was doing that. I was doing the work for small town leadership in the early morning, in the late night, in the weekend, in like pockets of 15 minutes of time. I say I have a business that's been built on pockets of 15 minutes of time. And honestly, I find myself going back to that more so now than I have in a really long time. So it's taken me a little bit to kind of get my wheels under me in terms of what is my new normal as a full-time entrepreneur. And I think for a while I was trying to keep desk hours, like be in my office from 9 to 5 and do the things. And now, honestly, I will just do the 15 minutes of things I need to do and then go check on the kids, say, do you want to take a walk? Who wants to go play out front in the yard? Who needs to take the dog out? So it's honestly, it's using all the things that help me build the business and reverting to that. So I have a lot of my work still gets done super late at night or super early in the morning. That way I'm kind of open during the day for when my family might need me. And oftentimes, when I do have those pockets of time open, they're deep in whatever it is they're doing. And like, no, mom, we don't need you. I'm like, oh, okay. But it's really like using the things that have made me successful to build the business in this time have been really important. And I think that's the big pivot that we're going to see across the workforce for whether it's big corporations, smaller businesses. Once people do start to return to offices on a more permanent basis, they're going to be asking the question, do I need to have my behind in this seat from 8 to 5 or 9 to 5 or 8 to 6 or whatever the norm is? Or instead say, I worked pretty well working in 3-hour blocks of time over a 12-hour period. Can I do that?
Mhm.
So I think we've got some excellent like time elements to work with people's own rhythms right now.
Okay. So, as a writer, um, pretty much every business owner should be doing this. I know they're not, but you have to provide content. It's not so much about sell, 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 sell. You have to provide that content and follow-ups and all of the other things that go with it. And as a writer, what would you offer to people that like to write? And on the other hand, for those that don't like to write or just can't get in that space to as they say, spit out the words.
So I happen to be one of those people who love to write. I'm an author who actually loves to write. There are many authors who don't love to write, and I follow the inspiration. And I think this goes for people on either end of the spectrum, whether you love to write or don't love to write. When you have that burst of inspiration, get it down on paper or on a Google Doc or on a voice memo, whatever it might be. I think most of the book that I just came out with was written via voice document, talking to my phone after I would take a drive or take a shower. I'm like, there's the idea, and then blah, 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 into my phone, and then turn it into words. So I think that can work for so many people. And I think what people get scared about is like sitting for a long period of time in front of a screen trying to write. And I worked with a writing coach this year to get my book produced, and she very much subscribed to the little chunks of time do everybody good when it comes to writing. So it's sitting down for 15 minutes and just typing out a few sentences and seeing where that goes. So I say, go when the inspiration hits, do it in short chunks of time, And if you're really stuck, there are a ton of books or websites that have short writing prompts just to get you started and get those creative juice flowing. It's like once you start to write, you will then want to write more. It's a virtuous cycle flywheel type of thing.
Right. I completely agree with that. And even I tell a lot of my clients, and it's like when you have that idea, it doesn't have to make sense. So, get out of that mindset of it doesn't make sense or I don't know what this means. Just get it down. And if that's, grabbing your phone and doing a recording, going to Evernote, typing, Google, whatever it is, using your note section in your cell phones, just put it down. Forget about grammar, forget about punctuation. I know that some English teachers say, but yeah, you have to forget about the punctuation and, all of that stuff and just do it. I've done that many of times where, you go through things and it doesn't make sense or the words aren't spelt right. And I go back to them like, oh, what was that? What was that? And it might not come back to me till weeks or a month later, but it's like, oh, that's what I meant when I did this. And there's even been times where, you're laying in bed watching TV or getting ready to go to sleep and something just pops in. I grab my phone and da 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 da. Okay. It's just, it's really crucial that you get those things out somewhere on paper, recorded or something. So what you agree to, it's like, regardless of what it sounds like, or if it makes sense, just spit it out.
Exactly, because the more you spit out, the more, to your point, it'll start to be cohesive at some point. I've kept a document for the last 5 years, and it's just called unpublished content. And when I have an idea for the next e-newsletter I'm going to send out, or the next blog article, whatever, even a social media post,
Yeah.
I'll just use that document. And it's just, so I know I have a place. So have a place, to your point, you gave people lots of options, whether that's the notebook you carry around with you or something on your phone or your computer. Just know where your place is. That way they're not in 4,000 places and you never, and then you're looking at Post-its galore all over the house. No, it's like,
Excellent
I know to go to that one Google Doc. It has all the things I might need.
Excellent point. Excellent point. Yeah, that makes a huge difference. And for people that do use Google Docs or Evernote or any of these online or app devices, be sure you're logged into the exact same account on all of your devices.
Amen.
I can't tell you how many times I've got, well, I put it in on my cell phone, but I can't find it on my tablet. I'm like, okay, let's go all the way back to the beginning. Let's look at how you're signed into this account. You can't be signed into two different accounts and expect to see the same thing. And they run into that habit. Oh, it's not showing up here, so I put it on the tablet and I go put it on. So you're doing all of this triple work for the exact same idea that doesn't make sense. So just be sure that you log into that exact same account for whatever you're using. So that way you can get it on all, you can be able to see it on all your devices. So I wanted to throw that in while we was there to be sure,
No, and I'll tell you why that's important. So I recently migrated. I used a personal Gmail account, and then, which took me a while. I was on Hotmail for so long, and I finally gave that up. So I moved to Gmail, and then recently I moved all of my business stuff over to a G Suite. And so to your point, right now I've got like 4 ways to get into Google. And I'm like, where's that document? Oh, I'm logged into the wrong one. So I have a shortcut on my bookmarks that can take me to my business Google accounts and my personal Google accounts. And then I can now see what's what.
Yeah, that is so important to follow. Can you talk more about small town leadership and let us know not only what that is, but how can someone benefit from it?
Absolutely. So small town leadership really has 3 prongs to it. So first and foremost, I'm a speaker. So that's where I kind of grab my leadership roots as a small child. So I love to speak to organizations, community groups, nonprofits about this whole idea of how do you make your organization feel more like a small town? And there are lots of little lessons and little nuggets and stories that help those bring to life in a really fun, memorable way that's not your typical leadership speaker. And then secondly, I am a writer. And if you go to smalltownleadership.com, I've been keeping a blog for the last 5 years. So blogs they're still there, but they're not probably the biggest driver of anyone's writing business. So I did turn much of that into a book that has recently launched called Let Her Out, Reclaim Who You've Always Been. And it's a tie back to all those stories of growing up, but it's also connects really closely to coaching, which is the main service offering that I do through Small Town Leadership. So in 2017, I became a certified coach, and I coach leaders and executives on how to do all these things we've been talking about. How do you take your leadership style so you can make your company, your organization, your team feel like they're in that small town atmosphere, feel like their work matters, and that everyone is marching to the beat of the same drum.
Okay, great. So with being a leader, I'm kind of, picking at your words, sorry.
Oh,
But
it's great.
as a leader, as an entrepreneur, not only are you there to, as a leader, but to lead your client to whatever that ending stage is. How can an entrepreneur or even a professional, someone that's in their career, act as a leader without being a dictator?
Mm, mm, this is timely,
I'm just,
Yeah, you're just saying, oh my gosh. So how long do we have? Oh, so what I did in my corporate life before I went out on my own full time was to help our internal leaders be more coach-like. So I was part of putting hundreds of leaders through a coaching program internally. So they knew how to be a coach. And at the end of the day, they became certified coaches. And to me, that is the number one skill that anybody can gain, whether you're a leader at the highest level, a middle leader, a frontline leader, or even an individual contributor who wants to lead from their seat. Having coach-like skills is so incredibly important because coaches are curious. Coaches don't come in with a preconceived agenda. Coaches ask great open-ended, powerful questions that get the other person to take action. So, I think everything you're thinking about from dictatorship is do as you're said, command and control, follow the rules, stay in the lines, all of those types of things. Like there's only one way to do this. It's black and white. And when you get to experiment with coaching, you start to realize, one, how beautiful and amazingly complex human beings are and how we all are motivated differently. And that requires us to care about people, to get curious with them, and to empower them to do the right things. And I feel like the biggest ahas that I've had with leaders that I've worked with is when you allow them to go from that moment of, oh my gosh, maybe I'm new in my leadership role. I've always been an individual contributor. So everything was about my performance, my metrics. Did I screw up or did I not screw up? And all of a sudden as a leader, you feel like, oh my gosh, now I'm responsible at the level of myself and my team for all this. So that's where we see a lot of micromanagement, dictatorship, whatever you might want to call that. But when you can get those leaders to step back and say, okay, it's not your job to figure all this stuff out for the team. It's your job to empower the team. It's your job to encourage your team to try and fail and try again. That's when you just see their shoulders relax. You see them exhale because all of a sudden the time demands that they are under are reduced. The stress and just the mental fatigue they have go down because all of a sudden they're sharing, and I don't want to call it the burden, but they're sharing the opportunity with those around them versus holding it all in themselves. And I think that's a reason we see a lot of leaders come from that more dictatorial style is because they're fearful. They're scared of failing. And if they would just release that a little bit and say, okay, I'm not the only one here. I have people who can help me, then we're living in a completely different world. It's everything from like fear-based mindset to opportunity mindset, from scarcity mindset to abundance mindset. I think those are all poles on that spectrum. And we need to lean more toward opportunity, lean more toward abundance in our thinking and in the way we show up with the people we lead.
We're going to get into a little coffee cup therapy with Tracy. Let's talk a little bit about some happiness.
Hey, savvy listeners, it's your girl Tracy with another edition of Coffee Cup Therapy. You know what to do. Get your coffee, come on in, get comfortable, and let's get in this good word. So today's topic is going to be happiness. You know, happiness is the consequence of personal effort. You fight for it, you strive for it, you absolutely insist upon it, and some even travel all the way around the world in pursuit of it. You must participate relentlessly in the manifestation of your own blessings. I'm going to pause right there for just a moment. See, once you achieve the state of happiness, you must never become lazy in maintaining it. You must always continue to swim toward and maintain your own personal happiness forever. Now, y'all go out there and be awesome today, but please remember it's a pandemic and y'all be safe. Mask up, social distance, and again, please be safe by all means. This world absolutely needs you, so participate accordingly. And, oh yeah, don't forget to send me feedback. All emails, suggestions, and your thoughts can be sent to media@savvymag.biz. Hope to hear from you. And oh yeah, enjoy your coffee. Talk to y'all later.
Well said.
Boom. That only took a couple minutes.
How can someone I won't say determine, but how can someone adjust that mentality? Say that they are somewhat, or either that fine line of being a dictator instead of a leader, and how can they correct that? And how can someone approach someone to say, hey, I just want to make you aware of how you're coming across?
We'll start with the first one first. I think that's a little easier than the second one. So if someone is listening to this and they're saying, oh gosh, am I one of those people that comes off as a little too command and control, a little too alpha, whatever the case might be? It's starting small. And that's how all of everything works, is starting small. So we're not asking you to turn on a dime, make a 180, and all of a sudden it's kumbaya. We're asking you to pick 5%, 10% of the things you're working on, and how can you open up that one project? How can you open up that one opportunity and see that from a different perspective and say, you know what, where I typically would have done everything, I would have laid out the project plan, I would have written the Excel spreadsheet, I would have told everybody exactly what they're doing and when they're doing it. Instead, on that project, I'm going to open that up for a team discussion, for groupthink, for brainstorming. Boom, that's like a first step you can take. So it's just thinking about, you're looking at all your work that's in front of you. What's one thing that you can hand off and think about that differently? So personal example, even as an entrepreneur, I was doing everything in my business until this year. And I mean, there are a few things I outsourced, but most everything I've done myself. So this year I decided, okay, that's not the kind of entrepreneur I want to be. So I hired someone to manage all my social media, and I hired someone to build me a new website for the book that I have coming out. And let me tell you, like, the work product that these people are creating is way better than I ever would have done. And I have had to release control a ton to make that happen, because I have the skills. I know how to do a good social post. I know how to build a website. I have all that vision in my head. But when I was able to give my vision to someone else who's extraordinarily creative and even more talented at that thing, I have been blown away. I mean, I think the website that my person created is gorgeous beyond belief, and he has been able to do every single thing I've wanted to and better than. So I think that's also what you have to remember if you're feeling like this, is what's the possibility on the other side? Things could be 10 times better when you release the control. So it's allowing yourself to envision what could happen. So pick one project and envision it. So the second part of your question is where people do have the hardest time. It's giving that feedback. It's giving the feedback, and whether that's giving feedback up to a leader who you report to, or to someone beside of you as a peer, or even someone who works for you, to say, hey, I think you need to release the grip a little bit, be a little more coach-like. We have to remember that people like to get feedback when it is couched in a supportive, loving manner. So feedback is by number one, the hardest thing to teach people to coach on, because they're so scared. Anyone giving feedback is scared that this person's not going to like me anymore. Our relationship is going to be ruined. Any number of bad outcomes that might come from me saying, hey, you know what? We need to have a talk. And you know, you've had that conversation with people. They've said, hey, we need to talk. And you immediately go to, oh my gosh, what did I do that's horrible? And I am sure more times than not, the feedback was positive and you're like, what did I worry about?
Right.
But if the feedback is coming from a loving, caring, kind place, the person will be willing to accept that. And guess what? You also have to be prepared when you're giving that feedback that they might be a little put off. They might need a minute. They might get a little mad. And so all those things, just be ready for those to happen and release yourself from the outcome. Because the one thing in management and leadership I've learned is we cannot control other people.
Yes.
Everybody has tried every way, every which way, and it does not happen. And when it does happen, it's usually done out of fear, and that lasts a very short period of time for people to be motivated by it. So it's just remembering where these thoughts and feelings are coming from, stepping into those fully. When people see you coming from that authentic, caring place, they're going to embrace that. It might sting, it might hurt. I've described it like a shot, like getting a flu shot. So feedback is, you know, whether you're giving it or receiving it, it doesn't matter, but that initial, it stings for that second. And then, it stings for that second, and then it protects you for the whole season.
Okay. When that is recognized, I think that a lot of people, not only do they, let me back up. If you really understand and you want to be better as a person, and you want to be that person where you want to listen to your client, listen to your colleagues, that you will take that advice and be like, oh, okay, well, I didn't know, I was, that forceful or that demanding, I didn't realize that. So now, okay, now I'm aware, let me practice that. And I say practice because it's not like a light switch where you can flip it on and off. So you're going to have to practice in those small increments to, watch what you say. And then now when you start to talk or when you start to do stuff, you're going to start listening to yourself literally and be like, oh, wait, I hope that didn't sound too forceful, or too demanding, so you're going to start listening to yourself a little bit more, to start making yourself aware of some of the things that you're doing. And I love the way that you've explained it and made it really simple, but at the same time, understanding those small little steps that we just need to take. And I think that just goes to everything, the small step, that we don't want to leap. We don't want to jump. We don't want to sprint. We want to take those small steps, because, when we start running and sprinting, you pass stuff. Sometimes you see it, sometimes you don't, because you're moving. But when you're taking those small steps, you're more aware of things that's happening, and you can prevent a lot of mistakes in the future. Financial mistakes and just regular mistakes as well. I mean, it literally can cost you a lot by sprinting or running.
Absolutely. There is something to the concept of slowing down to speed up that is so incredibly powerful. And we're so used to an on-demand world that if we can figure out those things that we purposely need to slow down and do, then everybody's going to be better for it, because of everything you just said. You're going to catch things before they turn into a bigger issue. Or you might have that small burst of inspiration that's going to turn into the big win that you wouldn't have seen if you were sprinting and rushing right through.
Absolutely. Well, tell us about your book. Let's shift a little bit and let's talk about your book.
Well, my book is called Let Her Out, Reclaim Who You've Always Been. And it's a project that I wasn't expecting to be a book, but one day it just turned into be that. I had submitted this idea for a TED Talk in my town, and after getting rejected for that TED Talk, I submitted it to a few other women's conferences to present, was accepted to be a keynote speaker, and then all of those keynote speeches got canceled because of COVID.
Oh,
And so
wow.
it's spring of 2020, and I have this great idea because at the end of 2019, I uncovered all the diaries and journals I've kept since I was 8. And when I was reading them, I was like, oh my gosh, like this is the person who needs to show up in the world. This girl who said these things when she was 9, 10, 15, 17, that's who the world needs to see more of. And I decided that I would create my own stage in April after all of these speeches got canceled. And I just invited whoever wanted to come to my little Zoom keynote speech on a Wednesday night in this home office that I'm sitting in right now. And I delivered what would have been that keynote speech, what would have been that TED Talk. And coming away from that, I was like, oh my gosh, this is my book. Because I've always known I wanted to write a book, and I've tried and started and nothing ever stuck. And I'm a very big proponent of don't force anything. So this just sort of rolled right off my tongue when I was writing the presentation. And I hired a book coach the day after I did that keynote here in my home office. And within, 8 months, I have a complete manuscript, and it's out into the world.
Congratulations.
Thank you. It's been an unexpected joy of 2020. I'll have to say that.
Wow. I think 2020 has forced a lot of people to do things either that they didn't know they could do, or they had no idea it was within them. So I think that's what we're leaving with 2020 with, is doing a lot of new things.
Absolutely. And certainly not only writing a book, like I said, I enjoy writing. So the writing part was easy. And because I had so much material, so I'm probably one of the few authors who had too many words in my manuscript. I needed to cut them down. And because I had words written in those diaries, I had blog posts that meshed beautifully with what the purpose of the book is, because it's very much how I describe it as life story meets life coaching. So it's my journey, it's my experiences, not from this place of triumph or tragedy. I consider myself just kind of a normal Midwestern mom who's a business owner, right? Who's writing my truth. And I don't think we have a lot of those stories out in the world. We see the really, like, rags to riches stories, or the overnight type stories. And to reiterate your thing about small steps, like this is more of a small step story. And I think that's how most people can relate to making change and to ultimately bringing her back into her life. So it was a fun project to be able to revisit my her, as I call her, throughout the book, but at the same time, give everybody exercises and coaching questions that they can use to bring out her. And I just envision this being a book where women will be sitting in their living room or over Zoom for the time being, having a book club discussion around all of the content, because it like screams for, girlfriends and a glass of wine.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I completely agree with everything you're saying. And like you said, being a life coach and taking it to a life story, or do I have it backwards? Sorry.
It's close enough. You're
Okay.
good.
Okay. So, taking that, and it's so many stories that can come out of 2020, and so many people that need to document those stories. And it's your story, it's your experience. And some of those stories have come out in such a great way, through 2020. It was, hard, and, it's a lot of rough things that happened there, but, the growth from some of the things that has happened in 2020, I think it's so many of those stories out there. And I think people should share those or want to put them out. If anyone is listening to this, that is that person that want to get that story out, what can you offer them, and how can they connect with you as a coach to say, help me extract all of this stuff out, and put it on paper?
Oh my gosh, it's a great question. And for that very reason, I have, so it's pick up a copy of the book, just, grab it wherever you want to get books. And it's, a $16 investment in your own life coaching because, and I've actually told prospective clients recently, like, go get the book, do the book. If it speaks to you and screams to you and it requires more in-depth, like run-to-one work, then we'll talk. But I first and foremost get the book. And then, so even on my website right now, I have a ton of free resources for people that are all the questions that are in the book. So quite honestly, you don't even have to read the book. You can just go grab some of those resources to start documenting your answers to the questions I'm posing to help you remember the things that brought you joy that you're not doing in your life, to help you reconnect with the emotion that those made you feel. And so you can break down all the barriers that you face currently that are in your way to getting to those things. And if you can, start to break down those barriers, that's where I spend a lot of time in the book. It's all these hard barriers that we create for ourselves, either, because of time, money, lack of resources, or because we're telling ourselves stories. And so it's all about writing down your story so you can really, in black and white or ink or whatever the thing is, like, be able to circle the themes that have come throughout your life. And you have a choice right now to say, is that the truth I want to continue with or not? And maybe there was a truth that you knew when you were 8 years old that has been, put on the back burner that you want to bring back forward. And this book, the exercises and the questions will just help that bring them out for you so you can fully write your own story after having read this one.
Wow. How can someone reach you to work with you, connect with you on social media, just and purchase the book? So be sure to let
Absolutely.
everyone know.
I'm very easy to find because I am the only Natalie Sistan. So find me on LinkedIn, Facebook, or Instagram at Natalie Sistan. And then the two websites to find me are smalltownleadership.com. And then everything for the book is at letherout.com.
I love Let Her Out. I just love that topic. I mean, it's so much to do with that. But
I know.
okay, well, thank you so much for coming on and taking the time to talk with me today.
I am so excited to have been here. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you.